Am I the a-hole for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into a pool, resulting in the little SHTS falling in? My folks decided to host a barbecue, but I declined because I really don't like my two sisters, their husbands or their kids. My mom was persistent in getting us to go, so we went. By the time we arrived there were about 20 people there. My sisters and their husbands were already solidly buzzed. Intoxicated really. My mom was spending 100% of her time trying to keep the young nieces and nephews more or less under control. My dad had strategically retreated to the whirlpool part of the pool with a small cooler full of beers. Wife and I made small talk with miscellaneous people, ate food and had a frozen margarita. Sisters/Bills took turns criticizing us for being late, not being in our swimsuits and screwing up the vibe. Whatever. Typical suburban summer get-together. About 45 minutes in, two of the kids ran at one of the neighbor guests who was standing next to the pool and pushed her in. She was at the pool steps, stumbled in but didn't fall, so only got half wet. She was clearly very unhappy about it, but she didn't make a scene, just went over to where the parents were, grabbed their towels, dried herself off and left. Sisters and Bills thought it was all great fun. A bit later I was standing a feet away from the pool chatting away with someone. I saw three of the kids running full tilt at me from the corner of my eye. Obviously I was next. Not that it's terribly difficult to outwit young kids, but I just jumped out of their way at the last second. All three of them ran straight into the pool at full speed. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, started laughing, but their moms, who were pretty sh-to-faced, absolutely freaked out. Apparently two of the kids couldn't swim even though they were in swimsuits. Since I wasn't in swim gear, I stepped back from the pool and let other people fish the kids out. The kids were bawling. Their heads off like they'd lost a limb. At that point all hell broke loose. The four intoxicated parents were yelling at everyone in general and me in particular for nearly letting their kids drown, and also because two of the kids had been videoing the trick using their parents' iPhones, which were now at the bottom of the pool. One of my Bills got into the pool to try to retrieve the phones, but his BMI and BAC made that impossible. No one else volunteered to help, unsurprising given that my sisters were still bitching at everyone. I told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids and that if anything had happened to them it would have been their responsibility, not mine. There were some pretty strong words on both sides. Wife and I left after the other brother-in-law fell over and face-planted while yelling at us. Now they're saying I should have let the little SHTS knock me into the pool and let them have their fun. Mother-in-law abandons my child, shows up after 25 years and expects to be accepted as a grandmother. When my son was 3 days old, his mother decided she didn't want a child anymore, so I've raised him as a single father since then. She claims she's not ready to have a child and refused to even feed him or hold him. I wanted to give her some time. I thought that maybe it's just postpartum depression. I was ready to be there for her, but she was serious. She packed her stuff and left the hospital. Her last words were that she wants to see neither me or our son ever again, and she kept that promise. I got the feeling that mother-in-law had something to do with it because during her pregnancy she was talking all the time about how young her daughter is and how inappropriate of a moment this is for her to have a child. I think mother-in-law somehow secretly persuaded her to take this step. So I was left alone with an infant in my hands. It definitely wasn't easy. I was just 21 years old, I had to leave college and work very hard to give my son everything he needed. Fortunately, I wasn't completely alone. There were people who helped me to get through the hardest period, people who babysat him while I was working, who gave me advice on how to take care of a baby, and I'll be forever thankful to them. When he grew up a little, it became easier. I could send him to a kindergarten and work without asking people to take care of him while I'm not there. During all this time I hope to hear from his mother. I hope that she'll eventually come around and realize you can't just leave your child like a worthless piece of trash. But, even though I had left her my contacts and she could call me or write me a letter whenever, she didn't. I never heard from her. She never once used her rights to visit him. When he was little, he often asked me why his mother left him, why she didn't want him. And I didn't know what to answer because I always tried not to speak badly of his mother in front of him. Now my son is 25 years old, he's a hardworking, educated young man, and I'm so proud of him, and I'm proud of myself that I was able to raise him to be a good person. We stopped talking about his mother a long time ago. It was his initiative. He was like, well, if she doesn't want to be with us, then it's her loss and there's nothing we can do about it. So recently mother-in-law appeared on our doorstep. Without a call, without any kind of notification, she was just there and she had come to visit her grandson. I couldn't believe my ears, and at first, I almost didn't recognize her. And she was behaving as if she was a caring grandmother who had come to see her grandchild like she does all the time. Not like she was gone for 25 years. When my son saw her, he didn't recognize her either. I have shown him pictures of his mother and his grandmother just in case they show up one day, but I never really thought that they would. She ran up to him and hugged him just like a loving grandmother would, asking how he's doing and how big and beautiful he has become, and he pushed her away and looked kind of confused. I told him that it's his grandmother who randomly showed up to visit him, and he was like, oh, and walked away from her. Mother-in-law didn't take this reaction very well. She looked at me and was like, what have you taught him if he doesn't even say hello to his grandmother? He's looking at me as if I'm a stranger. Haven't you told him about his mother and me or shown him our pictures? Well, technically you are a stranger, mother-in-law. He had never seen you in person, so why are you so surprised? You show up out of thin air after 25 years when he's all grown up and expect him to treat you with love. Isn't it kind of delusional? My son said, Dad did show me your picture, but I needed no picture, I needed you to be there for me. He was quite hateful with her, throwing question after question at her, and mother-in-law's responses were so incredibly narrow-minded, it looked like she wasn't expecting him to ask any questions. He asked her where his mother was and mother-in-law was like, oh, she's doing very well, she's living together with a great man and she has 2 nice kids. She has gotten over that misunderstanding about your birth. She was acting as if her daughter was the victim here. As if we were the ones who left her. He asked her why did his mother abandon him. Mother-in-law said well, she was such a young girl, it would be crazy for her to have a child at that age. She had her whole life ahead of her and a baby would only be an obstacle. You must understand it, she didn't want to lose her freedom. Honestly, her daughter was older than me when our son was born, she was 24. I don't think it's too early to have a child, it's not like she was 14 or something. Actually, age has nothing to do with it. I could have given up my son too, I was very young as well. But I didn't because I loved him and I wanted to be his father. At this point I wanted to show mother-in-law the door, obviously, she wasn't welcome in our house, but my son stopped me, he had one more question. He asked why mother-in-law didn't want to be his grandmother. His mother left him, fine, but why did mother-in-law leave him too? Mother-in-law said well, I had no time to take care of you. I was a young woman too, I had my life too. And grandkids are only obligated to take care of grandparents when they're old and that's why I'm here. Then my son told her to leave and never come back, he said he doesn't want to see her ever again and he won't help her with anything. And as she was leaving, she attacked me like that's what I thought, a man alone cannot raise a proper human being. Such a rude and impolite boy, he would have turned out better in an orphanage than with you. So according to mother-in-law, the conclusion is, don't have children while you're young or if you do, feel free to leave them and then come back a few decades later and they'll love you even though they have never received any kind of care from you. But seriously, what the hell was she expecting? Mother-in-law rearranged my entire house so I cleaned her house. My husband and I have been married a long time, but his mother hates me. I've been low to no contact for probably the last 10 years and my life has been divine because of that. Husband doesn't mind because he gets lots of romance when his ma isn't interfering in our relationship. But way back, I tried so hard to get on her good side. I was such a sweet summer child. I thought to myself she should be happy for husband, I cooked and cleaned and threw parties and most people liked me. But she was sly, so husband didn't catch the nuances of her behavior. I tried to point it out, with little luck, because I had no experience with a woman like this. We left for our honeymoon a week after our wedding, enough time for us to set up our small apartment and get cozy living together beforehand. We left for a week with the keys left to mother-in-law to fetch our mail and various things. When we got back she had completely rearranged my kitchen, the living room, threw out some of my pictures and knickknacks from our bedroom, and I swear she also tossed some of my lingerie. I was upset, so upset and cried to husband. He, angry at his mom, talked to her then came home with the usual, can you guess it? She can't imagine why I'd be upset. She was being so helpful. She didn't mean to do anything wrong, and the tears came at her bidding so that husband was thrown for a loop, never having experienced woman-to-woman territorial stomps. He came home spewing her diatribe and simply told me that he would help me put things back. And he did, except for the kitchen, he only made things worse in there but not for lack of trying. Mother-in-law never even taught him to butter bread. She believed the man had to be the breadwinner and the woman had to stay home to clean the house, make the man food, and keep the babies healthy. She's even intruded on our intimate relationship, asking when we were going to give her grandbabies. But, I learned a valuable lesson. Whenever mother-in-law was up to her shenanigans, she would wait until we were alone, look at me and do this evil smile with a nod to acknowledge her disdain for me properly. I learned from the best, the very best. Mother-in-law was the town pillar, active in church and charity, and so sweet to the people she approved of. So, here is the meat of this post. Mother-in-law is old now, and still just as sneaky. If anything, old age has sharpened her skills, and she has taken on the role of helpless old lady quite fabulously. There are volunteers who help her and bring her meals, sit and read with her, it's all quite nice, really. She did a week-long stint in the hospital recently, and husband got the key to her house to retrieve her mail, etc. Well, I made a copy of said key without husband knowing because I had a plan. During that week, I took some time off work, I was so sick, don't you know, and let myself into her house to rearrange, clean her kitchen. I also threw away some broken porcelain and other items because they weren't necessary, took pictures off the walls and put them in the closet. Then I rearranged the linen closet, the coat closet, mother-in-law's closet and her bathrooms. Both of them. I left the living room mostly alone, sadly, but I didn't want husband to catch on. Then, on the day husband was supposed to pick her up from the hospital and bring her home, I offered to help husband clean her house for her homecoming. He was mildly surprised at my offer but I said I've decided to let bygones be bygones. I will help, then get out of the way so husband could help mother-in-law get settled in. She can mostly live by herself, with a little help every day from Tsna and Hubs to check in on her. So we cleaned, mopped, and vacuumed. Got everything sparkly and clean. I went with husband to fetch his mom and sat in the back seat. When we arrived, mother-in-law immediately noticed things were askew but she couldn't tell what it was yet. Then she noticed the missing pictures. Mother-in-law. What did you do with my pictures? Husband and me, what do you mean? Mother-in-law, you stole my pictures. Me, oh my, no mother-in-law, I helped husband clean and that's all. Husband confirmed that is all I did. I asked if she'd like some tea, and she yelled at me to stay out of her kitchen. She went in herself and screamed what had we done? I looked at husband all puzzled and husband repeated that he and I only cleaned the counters and dishes, and mopped. Mother-in-law was livid, so I told husband that my presence must be upsetting to her, so maybe I should leave. Husband was confused because he had no idea why his mom was acting so outwardly hostile to me and agreed. So I cheerfully told mother-in-law that I'd be on my way and husband could call me when he's ready to be picked up. That's all husband heard. He didn't see me smile at mother-in-law because he was facing my back. And you all, I nodded at her with her very own signature nod. She was livid. Husband told me on the way home hours later that she had accused me of all sorts of things, and that's when I said the poor dear's mind must be going. He agrees, the poor thing is getting so old, after all. She should have been nicer to me. I get to help pick her nursing home, and I know very well how to play the helpful supportive role. Thanks mother-in-law.
My awful friend lied about me hating a guy and spread rumors about us. They all called me a pick-me when I asked the guy to help me out in a dangerous situation. My friend Josh and I are really close and I get along well with his friend group. I've established good relationships with all of them except Alex. For some reason, he doesn't like me even though I've always been nice to him. I try to talk to him in group settings, but he always gives me one-word answers and then ends up walking away when it gets awkward between us. It's not that I desperately need him to like me, but we hang out with the same people so it would be best if we were both on good terms. It's been acknowledged by everyone in the friend group that we just don't get along. That being said, I have his number from a group chat but I've never texted or called him until a few days ago. It all started when my 20th birthday rolled around and I went out to party with some coworkers. We went to a bar, did karaoke, the whole shebang. But at around midnight, things got boring and someone had the bright idea of going to a guy's house who had some grass. I had never met the guy but I went along either way, which was probably the alcohol talking because I never would have gone if I was completely sober. At the guy's house, I felt very uncomfortable and pressured into doing something I didn't want to do. All of them were high out of their minds and I knew I didn't want to be there a second longer. I ended up having a panic attack in the bathroom and that's when I knew I needed to get out there immediately. I called Josh to come pick me up, but my call didn't go through. I tried another friend but she didn't answer either. As a last-ditch effort, I called Alex and asked if he could come get me. I'd pay for petrol and a thank you fee, or whatever. I didn't care, I just needed to get out. He was really reliable and he picked me up. He ended up crashing on the couch and the next morning, I gave him the money and apologized profusely. I felt so horrible that he had to spend so much time and effort on me when he didn't even want to be near me in hangouts. The next time I was with my friends, the girl I had called asked me why it had happened. I explained that I was in a crappy situation and needed her help, but it's okay because Alex came through. I wasn't expecting them to bombard me with "Are you okay?" but their reactions were just horrendous. They all called me a pick-me and accused me of putting myself in a dangerous situation as an excuse to get Alex in my life since it upset me that he didn't like me. I tried to explain that it didn't go down like that and he was the third person I had called and only the three of them could drive so it's not like I had many people to choose from. Besides, it didn't upset me that he didn't like me. I understand that not everyone is going to like me. I was just confused because I couldn't recall any instance where I had done or said something bad to him to make him feel this way about me. But nothing I said changed their minds. They all thought it was an a-hole thing to use real-life fears to shoehorn my way into Alex's life and I was psychotic for even doing that. I had mentally checked out of that conversation and just left. Later that day, Josh came to visit me and I asked him if he heard the girls saying anything about me. I'm almost embarrassed by how naive I was. Basically, a couple of months after I met the group, one of the girls asked me how I felt about Alex. I said he seemed like a sound guy overall but at that point, he had interacted with me once and it was him asking me to turn the oven on, so I didn't have much to go off. She asked me if I thought he was hot, I said sure. She asked me some more questions about him and the entire time, she was being kind of giggly and shy so I thought it was just girly gossip and her trying to bond with a new girl in the group. Here's where I effed up. At one point, I said that the fact he goes to the gym 4 times a week is intimidating to me. It turns out that this girl instigates and stirs things up for the fun of it. She asked Alex the same questions about me and he thought I was cute, too, but she told him I said I was afraid of him and found him intimidating so he should back off. I never even said he was scary or off-putting, she had completely twisted my words to create drama between us. As a result of this lie, he stayed clear of me and I had no idea about any of this. It didn't help that the girls were so nice to me so I never thought anything was wrong or that any of them were speaking rumors about me. It wasn't until he picked me up that they got openly hostile. Thing is, while Alex and I were in the car, we actually had a conversation for the first time. I think the forced proximity really helped because he had to hear me talk and couldn't just walk away like he usually does. Our conversations were really normal and we eased some tension between us. It was actually nice to talk to him. But after learning all of this, I felt so bad for him because he was walking on eggshells around me all because someone lied to him. That got me wondering what our friendship would have looked like if that girl hadn't gotten involved because he's a great person and he was fun to talk to. I told Josh that I would love to clear this up with him and let him know it was all a misunderstanding. So, he called Alex and we talked it out. He was really angry at the girl who orchestrated all of this and proceeded to confront her in the group chat. Things got messy quickly and now everyone thinks she's a lying, snotty brat.
My crazy religious mom is demanding I wear a chastity belt to stop me from touching myself. When I called the cops they found out she was in a cult and arrested her. My family is crazy religious to the point they dedicated their entire lives to their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Growing up, my siblings and I had to go to church every single day, study the Bible and basically memorize every chapter. Then we would get quizzed on them and would get a beating if we ever got anything less than 100. Now, my mom is trying to control my bodily urges. I'm 15 and sometimes I have to rub one out. If I don't, I can't function properly because it'll be the only thing I can concentrate on. I'm deeply ashamed of it and I don't know if this is a normal guy thing. Recently, my mom caught me rubbing one out and she was disgusted with me. She ranted about me sinning, going to help, listening to the devil's temptation and all that. I tried to explain that I couldn't help myself, but she didn't care and has been persistent in getting me to stop. She grounded me, hid my stuff, and even took my door off. I've resorted to just doing it in the shower whenever I get the urge, but I guess she caught on or figured I was going to do that, so now she's decided to get some kind of device and put it on me so that I can't touch myself. I knew she was dead serious about it and it wouldn't be out of character for her, so I didn't even question it. She's always doing weird things like not letting us go to the hospital if we get hurt because the medicine isn't natural. My little brother got hurt really badly a year ago and when he went to the hospital, he got in trouble for it. Honestly, her religion has definitely ruined our relationship and it's not just because I can't touch myself whenever I please. Anyway, there's no way she can legally make me wear the device, can she? I don't have a dad and my mom's family is just going to side with her, so I went to my math teacher who I see as a father figure. I told him all about my mom wanting to put this device on me and his first instinct was to call my mom, but I told him not to or else I'd run away and call the police if he did. Instead, he ended up calling the police and to my surprise, they'd already been suspicious about our neighborhood. I had to tell them everything that happened, which was honestly really embarrassing, but I talked because it could help me out. We went back home with them and my mom wasn't home, but they searched the place for anything suspicious. There, they found illegal substances. I knew she was right across the street with a preacher and before I knew it, my mom was coming out of the house with handcuffs. The police took me and my siblings to a shelter, which was honestly an upgrade from our house. My mom didn't take good care of us and barely talked to us if the topic of conversation wasn't Jesus. After a couple of days at the shelter and people hearing about what happened, there was one thing that they all collectively agreed upon: we were in a cult. The apartment we lived in housed all of the cult members and a bunch of illegal things were going on there, like them taking substances all the time and sexually assaulting people. We've been notified that we will never go back to our mom and she's being charged with several things. I also found out that the preacher was my dad. He was arrested as well with all the other cult members. I honestly can't believe all of this went down just because I wanted to rub one out in private.
My husband cheated on me and my narcissistic son kept it a secret because he wanted a new phone. Now he's begging to reconnect after 10 years of no contact. My son was the best thing to ever happen to me and I gave him everything he wanted. He and I were really close and I never had a doubt in my mind that I would not be alone in this world as long as I have him. That is until 10 years ago. My husband had been cheating on me with a younger woman, but that wasn't even the worst part. My son knew and he had hid the affair from me. I was devastated about the fact I was betrayed by the two people I care most about in this world. I asked why he hurt me so much and his response only broke me more. He had found out about the affair and when his dad begged him not to tell me, he asked for a new phone and promised he would keep this a secret if he bought him gifts. I was totally blindsided when I learned my husband took my son to meet that woman. They made excuses that they went on a ski trip and they took his mistress with them. I was devastated and I knew it would take a long time for me to heal from this. But things only kept getting worse. In the divorce ruling, my son chose my ex over me. He didn't even want to visit me after it was all done. I always tried to reach out to him but I kept getting denied. He told me he didn't want me to be his mom anymore and he preferred his stepmom because she was cooler. At that point I gave up and went on with my life. But I never forgot about him. I would always wonder how he was doing and as the years passed by, I would get sad all over again about how things went down. Since he didn't want me in his life, the best thing I could do was move on and focus on me. I put the past behind me and I eventually met a wonderful man who was a single father to 2 girls. Those girls loved me like I was their own mother and I realized how terribly I missed being a mom. Him and his girls were everything I needed. We eventually got married and then I got pregnant. I was so happy that I could have a kid of my own again and I was excited to give my stepdaughters a new baby sister. But all I could think about during that pregnancy was how I wanted to meet my son and tell him he is going to be a brother to a baby girl. I never did though, and no matter how much love I received, deep down I was still miserable about what happened. And then I gave birth. I almost died on the spot after my daughter was born and the only thing on my mind was my son. I still wanted to meet him, but I knew he did not want to see me so I just gave up the idea. I talked to my husband about how I was feeling and he was sad that I still held some attachment to my past after everything that happened, but he ultimately understood because that was my son and he was my son for 15 years before he stabbed me in the back. My husband promised me that he would never let me experience that type of pain ever again and he reassured me that his girls wouldn't want anyone else as their mom. That gave me so much comfort and I put all my blood, sweat, and tears into all 3 of my girls and my husband. Over the years, the memories of my son just became vague as I immersed myself into my new family. My life was seemingly perfect, but I should have learned that good things never last. Because just a week ago, my son sent me a series of messages talking about missing me and wanting to meet up. To say I was surprised was an understatement. I wondered why he wanted to see me after 10 years of no contact. I was suspicious and I didn't even feel excited about this turn of events. As a mother I knew I should have been over the moon but I was not. I told my husband about this and he said it was up to me whether I wanted to meet him or not, while my parents said I deserved closure from him, so I needed to go see him. I didn't think I could handle reliving that trauma all over again. After thinking about it for hours on end, I asked him to meet me in a public park. Seeing him again made the time apart feel so real. He was not the same 15-year-old he once was. He was a man. He was all grown up. I won't lie, I wanted to cry but held my composure. It was really awkward for the first few minutes and we were just engaging in small talk. I was so nervous though, and then he said,
"You must be wondering why I contacted you."
The answer broke me beyond belief. I didn't get any type of closure and I couldn't even mentally prepare for what he was going to say. I just wish I had never gone to meet him because it was just heartbreak after heartbreak with my son. He said,
"I need $20K from you because I want to go to law school and my dad can't afford it."
His dad lost a lot of his money a few years ago due to a loss on his business and his company was bankrupt. He also had 3 more kids with his mistress wife. I felt myself going numb. I couldn't even begin to process what was going on. After 10 years I was finally meeting him. I was hoping that we could reconcile and he would understand what I have been through, or maybe my husband was lying to him. But no, he just wants money from me. I told him I cannot give him money, not such a huge amount. He got defensive and kept saying why not? And then he asked,
"Is this about Dad's affair? Geez, when will you get over it?"
I asked him, "Why do you hate me? What have I done to deserve your hatred? Have I ever raised my voice? Have I ever hit you or said no to you? Then why? You always pushed me away when I tried to get closer to you? Why and what did I do to deserve it?" He took a deep breath and answered,
"You don't understand, Mom. You really expected me to come with you? You had nothing. At least my dad could afford the lifestyle I wanted and my friends actually like my stepmom. Everything was fine until you discovered Dad's affair and my deal with him. I get it, you didn't hit me or scold me, but you were not able to afford the life I wanted."
I asked him if he really thinks his father's affair was actually the best way for any of us. I sacrificed a lot for him and yet he chose someone who he only met when he was 14. He said he doesn't want to talk about that because it was so many years ago and I should just drop it. I asked him why he never visited me and if it was his dad who tried to stop him from seeing me. He responded that he never wanted anything to do with me because I was poor and nothing I had ever given him was of any real, monetary value. He called me cheap and annoying, then said he was glad he had his stepmom because I was an embarrassment to him. I had enough at that point and put my foot down. I was firm with him that I wasn't going to give him any money. He got really defensive and said I owed it to him for ruining his life. I was shocked that I was getting the blame for something his dad had done. I had been through so much because of both of them, but he rolled his eyes and told me he didn't want to hear my life story, he just wanted the money that he knew I had. I said that according to him, I was poor so he needs to go to his stepmom because she's clearly richer than I am. He got really mad and yelled that they were all broke and he needed my money. I did not want to be his ATM, I wanted to be his mother, but he rejected me more times than I could count. I was not going to get mistreated and taken for granted again. I told him no and went to leave. I heard him calling me a bitch and said he was glad my ex cheated on me because I was a horrible person. I cried all the way back home and I regretted ever seeing him again. I couldn't believe the man my son turned out to be, he was just a money-hungry person.
My Tinder date was my childhood nemesis because she stole a precious gift from me. She has no idea and I don't know if I should tell her. The very first person I've ever hated was a girl from my childhood who stole my precious balloon. I was 9 at the time and was in the hospital for treatment. I couldn't see my parents often because the hospital was far from home, but my mom gave me a balloon with the words "Get well soon" on it. I was fixated on it because it made me feel close to my parents, so I took it with me everywhere. Well, one day, I went wandering around the hospital and the balloon ended up slipping away from me. I went after it, but a girl around my age grabbed it. I asked for my balloon back, but she refused and ran off to her mom. Confronting her never even crossed my mind and I was pretty scared that she had grown up with her, so I let her take it away. I was devastated from then on because the balloon was so special to me. I eventually let it go years after the fact, even though the grudge has always remained till today. Now, I matched with a girl on Tinder and she's honestly really great. We've been on a couple of dates and we've exposed a little bit about ourselves on every encounter. Our recent date was no different, except I was going to have my life turned upside down. I had never believed in fate before, but there was no way this wasn't some divine intervention or something, because when we were discussing regrets, she told me about the time she stole a balloon at a hospital from a boy years ago and has regretted it since. She said she wanted to apologize to the boy if she ever met him again. I was shocked. There were just no words to describe what was happening right now. I had to be sure she wasn't playing some mind tricks on me and she somehow knew this had happened to me, so I asked her to tell me more. She revealed more details that made me 100% sure she was the same girl, like the fact she knew the balloon said "Get well soon" on it. I burst out laughing because here I was, having dinner with my childhood nemesis who held the record for most hated person in my book. And she was an amazing person. I never would have pegged her for a thief. She was trying to figure out why I was laughing so hard, and I just said the story was really funny. I didn't have the balls to tell her the boy was me. She explained that she really liked the balloon and she told her mom the boy gifted it to her, and now it makes sense why the mother waved at me back then. I must have been wheezing at this point because this whole thing was so ironic. I genuinely cannot believe the same person who stole my balloon years ago, my one truest antagonist, my villain origin story, has been staring at me right in the face. I also couldn't believe that was one of her regrets. She must have been 9 and she felt extreme guilt over it. I don't even know how to deal with the grudge now because it's just so funny that this happened. I mean, what are the odds really? I'm now waiting for the perfect chance to tell her and see the look on her face. I didn't tell her on the date because I didn't want her to think I was lying. So, the plan was to get the same balloon from all those years ago. It was a heart-shaped balloon with multiple colored dots as well as the writing. I went out to buy that and I also found some old photos during my time in the hospital from my mom's album. I was going to stick the photo to my forehead, have the identical balloon with me, call her over, and let her figure the whole thing out on her own. So, I did all that and at first she looked very confused but I could see the gears turning in her head. It finally clicked when I said, "This time you can't take my balloon." She gasped and started laughing. She kept repeating "no way" over and over again. She asked me if I was really the boy from the hospital and I said yes. We sat down to look at my photo album and I told her all about my grudge on her. She apologized a lot. But I said I was only going to accept her apology if she gave me my balloon back. She laughed and hit me in the face with a cushion. I'm going to have a field day telling this to our children at 80. What is the scariest fact about Japan's human experiments during World War II? Japan conducted a series of experiments on humans, also known as Unit 731. The scariest fact about Unit 731 is that they weren't all tried and executed like their German counterparts in such fields. Unit 731 had accumulated extensive amounts of research about all manners of the human body, its nature, its limits, etc. They also had a lot of research about biological and chemical warfare. By the war's end, the experimentation facility was slated to be demolished by a remaining EA division, however the explosives they had weren't sufficient as it was very well and sturdily constructed. Research, on the other hand, was being transported/destroyed. The remaining scientists had been ordered to take the secrets to the grave, essentially ordering them to commit suicide upon discovery. So much so that they were issued with what I'd assumed to be cyanide pills for this purpose. However, a leading American microbiologist had arrived in Japan to find out about this infamous Unit 731. With the promise of immunity, a new life in America, and protection from the Soviet Union, most of the scientists handed over themselves along with what research papers they had and what research was in their minds. After that, pretty much all researchers and scientists had simply vanished into thin air, with new lives waiting for them upon arrival in the United States. I recall reading somewhere one of the leading members ended up lecturing at a university about this field, however credibility is questionable. To me, the scariest fact of Unit 731 is that its people evaded justice, instead giving a new, fresh start so long as they promised to hand over themselves and their research, obtained through illegal human experimentation on biological and chemical warfare, generally prohibited forms of warfare, to American forces. Many people bring up cases like von Braun as examples. Yes, he was a rocket scientist on the V-2S, yes he used slave labor, knowingly or unknowingly I'm unsure, but no, he was not a NZ for the sake of being a NZ for private rocket work was prohibited. He pursued his dream to build rockets for space travel rather than unaliving, however rocket work for any reason other than warfare was prohibited. These scientists at Unit 731 experimented upon Chinese civilians and POWs as if they were simple lab rats. In fact lab rats likely would have still received better treatment. Forget degradation of human rights, this was a blatant dehumanization that completely disregarded any sense of humanity or reason. And then these people were allowed to live in America, widely regarded as the beacon of human rights, freedom etc., all for teaching America how to fight using disgusting and inhumane weapons, biological and chemical weapons. Even the Soviet Union, for all its infamous legacy, did not stand for this, and at the very least tried those few it managed to capture before they all fled. However they received lenient sentences so it's believed the scientists offered their knowledge in return for harsher sentences.